All right.
So on your tables in front of you, you see a data gel free card and an ouch card.
Right.
Try it again.
There
Perfect.
we go. Thank you, Tony.
So these are just tools and techniques that you could use. I like to pass it out at the beginning of a class or a session that I'm working on. And it's recognition that sometimes we're going to get it wrong. Or sometimes I have a question and I don't have the right words. I don't know the terminology. I don't quite get it right. So I'm going to hold up my Get Out of Jail Free card. And this is to let all of you know that what may come out next may not come out perfectly. I may fumble the words. I may use the wrong terminology. But this lets you know, like, hey, give me some grace here. I'm open to learning, you know, give me the right words. And we also have an ouch card. Maybe something during the course of a session that someone says is hurtful. It stings a little bit. And we just say, ouch. And that lets the person know, like, hey, let me rethink, you know, what might I have said. They may engage in a conversation after a class, go talk to that person and say, hey, so I noticed you said, ouch. Let's talk about it. What stung in that moment? Now, this Get Out of Jail Free card isn't a license to say anything under the sun without thinking, with being inconsiderate. It's not that. This is, I'm going to try to get it right. If I don't, forgive me, right? And so these are just techniques that help invite people into a conversation and allow them to practice giving grace to one another, to know that we're all learning and we're trying to figure it out. And so one of the ways in which we can have these difficult conversations is through play. And so play can look like a lot of things. It's games, it's activities, those non-threatening, maybe we're watching a movie, we're listening to a song that has some moving lyrics. It allows us to enter a conversation in a way that doesn't feel threatening. And so we're going to model some today. And so at your tables, there are some different items. And so as we come to an item that might be on your table, guess what? You're it. You are part of this experiment where we're going to act it out as if we are in the class. And these are things that you could do with your teams and in your classrooms and with your employees. And so the first one we're going to do is 4 corners. This is a great activity. I was a college debater, and one of the things that we did in debate is who knows what topic you're going to get in debate. And it could be a Com 101 class. Maybe they're doing impromptu speaking. This is one way to wrap in diversity topics and ideas into your regular lessons for Com 101 or debate or any other class. But it teaches perspective. How do I put on a hat and take someone else's perspective that's not mine, use some critical thinking, what might someone in this position believe? So we'll do an activity for that. We'll do a variation of a privilege walk. We'll do something called How Diverse is Your Universe? So we're going to start with 4 corners. So perspective taking is so important. Being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes and do that critical thinking. Some folks, I have put a blank piece of paper in front of you. So if you have that, turn that over. You're it. You're it for 4 corners. I've already filled it out. So if you were to do this in class, one of the ways that I do, I'll pass out a paper. It looks like this, and it just has some questions on it. Whatever is happening at that time. So during this time, whenever I made this, One question says, English should be the official language of the United States. Question 2, taking a knee or refusing to stand during the national anthem is unpatriotic and disrespectful. 3, segregated housing in terms of race, gender, special interests should not be allowed on college campuses. So examples, single-sex residence halls, Greek housing, honors societies. 4, allowing transgender women to participate in women's high school and college level sports places biological women at a disadvantage. 5, role models, mentors are more effective if they are of the same race, gender as the student. And so I take these topics that can be hot topics, right? People are all along the continuum as far as what they believe. And I ask students to, this is anonymous, in your seat, you're gonna put your answers. You're gonna take your answers once you're done, and everyone's gonna crumble them up. And they're gonna toss it to the front of the room. So duck if you're at the front. And so in the front of the room, there'll just be papers all over. And then it's everyone else your seats, go grab a paper. That's now your new opinion. And here's the rule. When you grab your paper, it's you. There's no, I don't know why this person would write this, but if I was dumb, I would say, do you see what I'm saying? We put our, it's what Dr. Kelly was talking about, we put our moral twist on it. No, if it says, I strongly agree that English should be official language, you're gonna pick that corner and you are gonna speak as you strongly agree. What might someone say? And this is where critical thinking comes in, right? We've got to think critically. So it doesn't matter if you personally don't agree, because this is now you, and that's what you're going to represent. And so we're just going to do a quick round with those who I've already pre-assigned your answers. So find your corner. It's right. So disagree, strongly disagree, agree, and strongly agree. So we're looking at the first one, the first question. The first question. So strongly disagree is that one in the back corner. Yeah.
I can use the corner over here.
Yeah.
Where are we supposed to stand?
So look at question number 1 and whatever is circled and go to that corner.
That I understand.
So I'm going to say it again. We know that you didn't pick these answers, so don't try to preface what you're doing with maybe a person thinks this. No, you're it. You're fully immersed in this role. How would you strongly disagree versus the person who just disagrees, or strongly agree versus the person who disagrees? So I'm going to start with our strongly disagree corner. Can I have a volunteer share with us why you strongly disagree that English should be the official language of the United States?
Well, for one, I never even chose English as my first language. Let's just say that first, because in my history, Black people was not given a choice to actually choose that English should be their first language. It was stripped from us, my birth language. So with that being said, I don't think that English should be the language of this land, because this land started off not an English-speaking country. If you go all the way back to Native Americans, who actually is the right owners of this land, they did not speak English. So why is English the language of this land is beyond me, except for the fact that it was a conquered land, and then the language was stripped from everybody else and then forced into actually having to speak English. It's not my first language. That's why it should not be the language of this land.
Thank you so much. In this corner, we have folks that agree. Oh, Why do you agree that this should be the official language of the United States?
I think it should be the official language of the United States because we're speaking it now. The entire conference is in English, and it is the language that most of our instruction is in. It is the most common language in our country.
We're going to switch corners. Next, we're going to talk about taking a knee or refusing to stand. So look at that and move to the appropriate corner based on what your answer is on your paper. And this will be our last round. And so we're going to talk to someone who strongly agrees with this. Strongly agrees taking a knee or refusing to stand during the national anthem is unpatriotic and disrespectful.
I'm strongly agreeing with this.
You strongly agree.
Well, I think context is probably what matters here. I think that some people may feel that doing so is disrespectful because it's inappropriate for the venue or the setting. That's about the best I can come up with.
And we're going to go with our disagree over here. Someone who disagrees taking a knee or refusing to stand during the national anthem is unpatriotic and disrespectful.
So that one. So I'm going to go with this country was founded on taking a stand, or in this case, a knee, and therefore this is something that can be viewed as very patriotic as they're standing up for their values and their morals, and therefore it's very patriotic and very much American.
Thank you. Thank you, participants. Your
I like that.
And so the topics can change all the time. It helps our students to take on different perspectives, to practice critical thinking, to look at another side of an issue, because you might feel strongly about it, and guess what? There's someone who feels just as strongly on the opposite end. And so how do we engage in conversations with people who may just as passionately disagree, but in a civil manner? And so we can practice this in the classroom and among one another. We're going to watch a quick video where you get to see a privilege walk, and we're going to do a variation of one here in the classroom. Sorry. I'm sorry. I don't know how to turn the volume up.
There you go. Yeah.
I think privilege is when some people have some things and other people don't have things.
I feel privilege is something that you don't even really have control over. I think it'd be silly for me to say I don't have a fair amount of privilege, considering like the country I live in and the job I get to do and the college I get to.
Suppose you want that will help me end up somewhere towards the front, but I'll take a few steps back from the day.
I don't think I'll make it to the front. I think I'll maybe be in the middle. That's just the gut feeling I have.
If your parents work nights and weekends to support your family, take one step back. If you can show affection for your romantic partner in public without fear of ridicule or violence, take one step forward. If you are embarrassed about your clothes or house while growing up, take one step back. If you have ever been diagnosed as having a physical or mental illness or disability, take one step back. If you've ever been bullied or made fun of based on something you can't change, take one step back. If you get time off for your religious holidays, take one step forward. If you came from a supportive family environment, if you can see a doctor whenever you feel the need, if you're able to move through the world without fear, if you stretch out well into your education, there are more than 50 books in your house. So these are your final positions.
I think it felt kind of strange for everyone.
It's a hard thing to discuss or even reflect on. It was very awkward. I think when you can represent it so visually like this and so immediately, it definitely takes on.
We were all joking around in the beginning of Free Lighthearted, and as soon as the questions started coming in, the mood shifted immediately, and we all kind of felt silent. Just looking back and seeing like a bunch of people behind you is not a good feeling.
It's like weird how you like hold on to explaining a certain privilege, like, oh, that's not actually, it's like, I work very hard for that. So it's weird to like take a step forward when you feel like you're taking a step forward with someone else, and you wear a lot of the baggage of like, I was hard. It was like, more emotional, I mean.
It reminded me of when they talk about slavery in high school, and you feel like angry for a few days, but then you just realize like, this is how it is.
For me, it was kind of frustrating almost to look back and see how much further some people were behind me, and realizing that, you know, a lot of that stuff, no amount of hard work or, you know, legislation can make them that gap.
It's interesting being Asian American, and kind of, you're not really sure where you fall on the spectrum of privilege.
I know that for me, one of the reasons I ended up far back was that there were questions around safety, as an African American, as a woman, as a everyday woman. There are just so many different ways that I felt.
I feel like I'm just really grateful for what you have. You know, we're in such a huge society where it's always complaining about what you don't have. It just shows you that for some families, like each family, you're meant to do better. My grandparents did good, my parents did good, and I will do even better.
I do think if you're not aware of privilege, you should do this exercise, but it's more complicated.
So, being aware of how your classroom is set up, the space is set up, not everyone has a wide open space where you can do this walk. But there are various variations that you can use no matter what type of setting that you're in. And so we're going to demonstrate one. So some folks in front of you, you have strips that look like this. So this is a variation. Instead of a privileged walk, students can collect strips. And the different color strips represent a different type of privilege. And at the end, a person would see their collection of strips that reflect, here's all the privileges that I have. And you saw the definition. It's that unearned asset that we benefit from, we move through the world with, that we didn't essentially earn. It simply is, right? And so for those that have these strips in front of you, I'm going to read some questions. And if you agree with that question, you will take a strip. So the first strip is a red strip. I can go shopping alone most of the time, pretty well assured I will not be followed or closely watched by store employees. If you feel like you can do that, take a red strip. One or both of my parents have a college degree. If you feel that is true, take an orange strip. I feel safe walking alone at night. that is true, take a blue strip. I know everyone's like, I want to go get some strips too. I've never thought twice about calling the police if there was trouble. If that's true for you, take a red strip. I can show affection for my romantic partner without fear of ridicule or violence. If that's true for you, take a green strip. I can show affection to my romantic partner without fear of ridicule or violence. I've never been told not to speak my native language during everyday interactions. If that is true for you, take a brown strip. Most people do not consider my religious practices to be weird. If that is true for you, take a pink strip. We'll do one more. I can do well in a challenging situation without being told what an inspiration I must be to people of my ability status. If that is true for you, please take a yellow strip. Can you read that? Read that again. I can do well in a challenging situation without being told what an inspiration I must be to other people of my ability status. So, those of you who have been collecting strips, if you can just stand up and hold your strips for the class. And so, much like that privilege walk where you saw a distance, this becomes another representation of the various privileges that we may hold. And so, the red strip is a race privilege. The blue strip is gender or sex. Green is sexuality. Brown is nationality. Pink is religious. And yellow is ability. And so, thank you so much. Have a seat. That's just one example. If you are in a space where you can't necessarily move around, you can have students or faculty, whoever is participating, collect strips. Another variation, I call it, the activity is called privilege for sale. You may go through and you would, on the board, have the alphabet written A to Z, and there will be a dollar amount assigned to every letter. So maybe it's from $100 to, I don't know, how many letters, $2,600. And it's at random. So Joy, guess what? You get $1,500. Yvonne, you got $200. And so everyone, based on the first letter of their first name, would see how much money they get. And then you would pass out to the class a list of privileges. And all the privileges have the same value. They're all $100. But based on the letter of your name, you might have 100, you might have 2,600. You get to go through that privilege for sale list and say, which ones are really important to me that I'm going to buy with my $200 because I can only buy 2. Versus Joy, she can buy 15. But that, again, is another way that will show how privilege shows up, how it's random. You didn't do anything to get your 200 versus Joy, who got her 1,500. But it's another way to do the same activity and not necessarily have to take up space. When we do these, you saw the folks in the video, they're like, ooh, it stirs some feelings, right? And so we always want to leave opportunity to debrief these conversations with the students. And so asking, what are your initial thoughts in doing this activity and seeing what comes out of that? Understand that depending on how deep you go into the conversation, sometimes people may disclose something that later on they regret. It may have been like, in the moment, I thought I wanted to step forward and acknowledge that. And then later, maybe not so much. And so just be prepared for that. But if you are the person facilitating, one of the things that I encourage you to do is make sure that you've done your own work, that when you're live in a session and you're like, I'm going to participate too, you may not want to disclose something that you haven't processed yet. Because you might also, like anyone else, feel like, wow, I can't believe I just said that out loud. And you don't know how you will respond. And so don't share something that you haven't yet processed. Reserve that maybe in a different space with some different folks. Do that, but not necessarily when you're live and you're the one leading the session. Be prepared for the wide range of emotions. Some people are mad, some people are sad, but allow space for that. You don't want to do it at the end of class and be like, see you later, and leave people to process on their own. You want to give time, sufficient time in your space to have those conversations together. And then to be able to, whether you're breaking them into groups or doing it as a class, to connect with those and check in on folks to make sure that they're okay. I'm watching my time. Okay. How diverse is your universe? So some of y'all have beads. We can move these beads over. There's some beads. And there's no one at that table. If someone wants to take the beads from the table, you can take all of them. Move to a table that has some beads.
How'd you guys get out of Dodge doing that?
I was like, sorry. Move over to a table with some beads. So this is just another way to reflect on when we move through life, the people that we see and the people that we encounter each and every day. And so there are some folks that have beads at their tables. You can see a color chart up here. I'm going to read some people that you encounter as you move through life. And you, using this chart, are going to pick a bead that you feel like is associated with that particular person. So here's the first example. The race of my primary care doctor. So what do you believe that person could be? Your primary care doctor. And you'll see some privilege showing up here because not everyone has a primary care doctor, right? So you'll select a bead for that. The race of my dentist. Look at the chart, pick out a bead.
Italian? What is Italian?
What?
Those that don't have beads, you can write it on a little piece of paper too. You can still identify, you don't necessarily have a bead, but you can write it down. Most of my elementary teachers were this race.
Elementary. She doesn't remember. I don't know her.
The grocery store clerk at the store I frequent is this race. My significant other is this race. My neighbor or neighbors are my minister or faith leader. My supervisor is
Oh, wait, he's not my supervisor anymore.
My closest friend. My housekeeper.
Someone would make that right.
Again, some of that privilege shows up because most people probably don't have a housekeeper, right? But it's another way. So when you look at how diverse is your universe, one of the things you can see is how diverse is it with the people that you encounter in your day-to-day life? How diverse is it?
If you didn't have any of them, could you do a clear beat so you can show it?
That would be great. I will add that, a clear beat to say, that doesn't apply to me. I like it. Thank you. But depending on where you live, even in the United States, this is going to be vastly different. My ex-husband was in the military. He grew up in Mississippi. I'm 43. He's a few years older than me. So not this large gap in space between our ages. And I remember having conversations, and he said to me, man, the first time I saw a Latino person was when I went away to the military. I grew up in Southern California, and I looked at him like, wait. Because I couldn't wrap my head around, like, his answer was, I've only seen Latino people on TV. My whole mind was blown away. His parents, who never really left Mississippi, came to visit us here in Las Vegas. We're minding our business, walking down the street, and his mom says, people do that here? And I'm like, do what? And she pointed out an interracial couple. Because where they're from in Mississippi, she'd never seen that before. Now, our institutions, we have students that come from all over the world, and they come here. And so it may be their whole world just got rocked. Whole world is rocked because they're being exposed to things that they've never seen before and never had those interactions. And we forget, when you're a person like me, who my universe is very diverse, like I can't remember it not looking this way. That's not everyone's experience. But being able to see it visually is a great representation. So I got 10 minutes. So we're going to talk about microaggressions. We want to be aware of these. I've seen speakers and they describe it different ways. One speaker talked about microaggressions. Imagine it being like a bee sting. Someone else said, imagine it being like a paper cut. Ooh, those paper cuts, they hurt. They're terrible, right? But now imagine if you got one every single day. The first one, you feel like, that's annoying, but every single day. That's what it could feel like for that person on the receiving end when it comes to microaggressions. And so microaggressions exist on a continuum from micro assault to micro invalidation. And so I'll give you some definitions of what those mean. So the micro assault is deliberate. So it's on this end of the continuum. It's a deliberate verbal or nonverbal attack meant to hurt the intended victim through name calling, avoidant behavior, or purposeful discriminatory actions. So an example could be discouraging interracial interactions, like, hey, child, you're not allowed to play with people who look like this. children learn that behavior and they might have, my mom and said, my dad said, my parents said, I can't hang out with you. Displaying a swastika, that would be on that deliberate end. Micro insults are characterized by communications that convey rudeness, insensitivity, and demean a person's racial identity and heritage. Micro insults represent subtle snubs, frequently unknown by the perpetrator, but clearly convey a hidden, insulting message to the recipient. Yes.
Well, why is it called micro? Why is it not just a rectangle?
So micro, because it usually exists between the two people. So micro is in relation to, I'm doing it to you, not on the macro level.
Interpersonal to person.
Yes.
Just the interaction, not the.
Mhm. And so an example of a micro insult, an employee of color is asked, how did you get this job? Or the student, how did you get into this school? Oftentimes, what's received is, are you a affirmative action hire? Are they meeting a quota? Is that how you got here? Versus the other people who earned their spot here, you were given it because you look like fill in the blank. Last is the micro invalidations, are characterized by communications that exclude, negate, or nullify the psychological thoughts, feelings, and experiential reality of a person of color. And so I'll give you some themes. So this theme is like an alien in your own land. What is that like? For people who are born here, so maybe it's a Latinx American or Asian American, someone encounters them and they say, wow, you speak English so well. That would be a microaggression. It's the assumption that they are born somewhere other than the United States, simply because of how you perceive them to look. Another theme that may come up in microaggressions is an ascription of intelligence. Wow, you are so articulate. I get this one. Wow, I didn't think you would look the way that you look when I saw you, when I heard you on the phone.
This is not me.
But I've got that my whole entire life. Wow, I didn't think you would look that way. You are so articulate. It could show up in seeing an Asian American and saying, can you help me with my math homework? I have this science project that needs to be done. Can you assist me with that? So it's this idea, the message is people of color are not generally as smart as white people, or because you're a particular race, that you are really good in particular areas or subjects. And so you have from the unconscious to the deliberate, and the things that we do impact people across that scale. It's understanding and being aware of that, and being able to address it when it shows up in our class. When it's like, oh, one African American student who's in my class, why don't you tell us about fill in the blank, so that you can speak for everyone who I think looks like you. Making sure that we're not being those who are inflicting the microaggressions. 3 minutes left. We're gonna watch this one last video. Oh, it didn't start. This thing, this PowerPoint is like killing me softly. I know,
You're doing fantastic. Her little red cup is the
it's not gonna work. And we don't have time. So I'll tell you about the video. So Renee Brown, she's fabulous. This video is all about empathy, and it talks about what empathy doesn't sound like, and what it does sound like. Empathy is different from sympathy. Empathy requires us to join a person where they're at. It requires us to think of something that connects us with what they're feeling and sit in that space that may be hurtful, may be painful, may be uncomfortable. Empathy drives connection. It helps us to feel closer to one another, and that is what we want. Versus sympathy sits at a distance and is like, oh, wow, that's really bad. Sorry, over there, but I'm over here. Empathy wants to change the subject. She calls it silver lining. Sympathy tries to put the silver lining. One of the things, one of the little characters says, sharing something really hard. Wow, I just had a miscarriage. The silver lining person is like, at least you know you can get pregnant. That doesn't drive connection, right? The person says, I'm having a hard time, kid A is flunking out of school. Wow, at least kid B gets A's. Versus, oftentimes people share these vulnerable things and we don't know what to say, but we feel like we have to say something, and we don't. Sometimes the best thing that we can say is, wow, I don't know what to say, but I'm so grateful that you felt safe enough to share that with me. And just sit with that person in that space. And so when we're doing these activities in our classes, when we're having conversations, when we're debriefing, we don't have to be the expert. Our words aren't fixing anybody's situation. I'm sorry if I'm busting your bubble. Our words aren't fixing anyone's situation, but we do have an opportunity to drive connection. This will be available after the conference. These are just some tools. These institutions have great diversity toolkits that have tons and tons of activities. You can draw on them. These are different movies. So movies are also a great way to have a conversation. Students sit down, enjoy a film, but then have some real conversation about the things that they watched. And movies are a great way to expose folks to things that they may not happen in their day-to-day life. There's also different games. I have this. This is a fun, easy game. You can buy it off of Amazon, but you throw it around, people catch it wherever your thumb lands. There's questions.
Oh, cool.
This one says, how do gender norms impact people's opportunities? Another one, what are some effective ways to address bias in ourselves and others? But you could toss it around. That's the conversation starter for that class. I hope there's something that you have taken away that you can implement right away. I'm happy to answer questions. I'll be running around all of the summit, so feel free to slow me down or trip me. Wait, I have a question. But all of this information, our plan is to have all the presentations up on the summit website, so you'll be able to access this information. Thank you so much for attending and enjoy your next session.